We gather here today in this historic sanctuary on a beautiful Missouri winter day to celebrate the life and to honor the memory of Jack Marshall. On behalf of Jack's family, I want to welcome you to this memorial service. How many decades was it that Jack Marshall devoted himself to Westminster College? 6? He always will be, a true son of Westminster College. Rightly known in his college family and beyond simply as Mr. Westminster. It is appropriate then that we come together on the Westminster campus in the Church of St. Mary Aldermanbury at the National Churchill Museum, which Jack also loved and served, for this time of celebration. Jack was also a valued member of the Fulton and Callaway County communities. His many contributions have been recognized by Mayor Leroy Benton and the Fulton City Council in a proclamation declaring this Jack Marshall Day in Fulton, Missouri. Jack left us very specific instructions for this service. He was clear that he did not want a somber funeral. He wanted an uplifting celebration. He chose the scriptures he wanted read, songs he wanted sung, including, and he was very adamant about this, the Westminster alma mater. He also let us know that the service should be in St. Mary Aldermanbury and there should be a time for fellowship and refreshments in the Undercroft after the service. Finally, Jack wrote shortly before he died that we should wait to have the service until after the Christmas and New Year's holidays. He said, "I don't want to inconvenience anyone." Sounds like Jack. So today, we will joyously celebrate Jack Marshall's life. We will sing his favorite hymns. Jack's nieces and nephew, Betsy, Katie, and Adam, will read passages from the Bible he wanted us to hear. We will have a prayer by Westminster Chaplain Reverend Jamie Haskins, and special music by Westminster Professor Dr. Natasha Kane and organist Julia Matthews. And Jack didn't specify this, but we say we're going to share memories. We want to remember Jack, and to do that, we will hear from Westminster President Dr. Barney Forsyth. We'll speak of Jack's leadership and legacy at the college and in the community. And Jack's brothers, Dick and David, will share with us what Jack meant to his family. And when this brief ceremony, as Jack specified it should be, is ended, we are all invited to continue our celebration of Jack Marshall's life in the memorial downstairs in the Undercroft. So now I invite you all, if you're able, to stand and join together in singing the first of the hymns Jack selected, Faith of Our Fathers.
Oh, us go to our God in prayer. Gracious God, your steadfast love endures forever, and your faithfulness to all generations. You are trustworthy in your presence, gracious in your deeds. Minister now to us in our grief, in our mourning. Speak to our hearts your word of comfort. Guide us into hope through the promises of Holy Scripture. Enfold us within the fellowship of all who share our sorrow, all who gather today to remember. Fill us with the joy and the peace that comes from your divine presence, for it is with enduring thankfulness and a deep peace that we join our voices together today, offering the prayer Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Wherewith shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before the high God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, or with tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?
He hath shewed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God.
Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
We gather here today in this historic church to celebrate the life of Jack Marshall, Mr. Westminster. We give thanks for his many and varied contributions to his beloved college and community. We draw inspiration from his legacy of leadership and service. His life, Jack's life, was indeed a life well lived. And so, on behalf of the entire Westminster College community, I want to extend a warm welcome and thanks to Jack Marshall's family and friends. This is indeed a gathering of the clan, and Jack is smiling down from heaven on us all. You know, it's times like these, when I'm called to speak on behalf of the college, that I often turn to one of several definitive sources for insights about Westminster College's historic past. Dog Lampkin's book, A Great Small College, or Bill Parrish's book, Westminster College, An Informal History. And indeed, I have turned to those today, but quite frequently and most often, when I needed deep background and personal insights about Westminster or Fulton or the Churchill Memorial, I would simply ask Jack Marshall, since he lived and in many ways he created the history of the last half century or more of our college community. I couldn't do that this time, although I tried to spend as much time with Jack in the last few weeks. And so I've turned to many of you whose memories of Jack that we've shared throughout the last few weeks, whose memories of Jack are shared on our website. The wonderful tributes that you've posted there and shared there of Jack. And what his many friends and admirers have to say about Jack certainly rings true from my own friendship with him. You know, Jack always had time for the personal touch, the handwritten note, the smile, the handshake. Jack had time for the personal touch. He was the real deal, a man of genuine warmth and integrity. And so, on behalf of all of you, the Westminster family, let's together reflect for a few moments on Jack Marshall's life and legacy and continue to draw inspiration from it. Now, following his graduation from Southwest High School in Kansas City, Jack entered Westminster College in 1949. He joined the SAE fraternity, was involved in a variety of campus activities, including the news editor for the columns, and graduated in 1953 with a degree in political science. In addition to Jack's graduation, a historic event that was, there were several other notable events that took place in 1953. I want to share a few of them with you just to provide you some context for Jack's life and contributions. Dwight Eisenhower was inaugurated President of the United States. The Korean War armistice was signed. Sir Winston Churchill was back in power as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and Elizabeth II was crowned Queen that year. You may remember that Crick and Watson discovered the structure of DNA that year and announced their findings at the Eagle Pub in Cambridge. I suspect there are a few of us who have tipped a pint in the Eagle Pub in Cambridge over the years. After walking through the columns, Jack served his country for 2 years in the United States Army in Germany before returning to Westminster College in 1955. And for the next 40 years, he served the college in every capacity imaginable. An admissions counselor, alumni secretary, director of publicity, dean of men, executive to the president, dean of admissions, vice president for development, interim president, secretary of the Board of Trustees, And Jack was also a fellow and a governor of the Winston Churchill Memorial and Library. You can't do more than that. Through 4 decades, from 1955 until his retirement in 1995, Jack's service had a profound impact on the many historic events in the life of our college. During his tenure, Westminster saw the campus transform with the addition of the Churchill Quad, Champ Auditorium, as well as the reconstruction of the Church of St. Mary the Virgin Aldermanbury here on our campus. And Jack played a key role in bringing the church to Fulton. When the decision was made for Westminster to become coeducational, President Harvey Saunders gave Jack the responsibility of writing the plan. And after the Churchill Memorial was established, raising funds and improving its resources became Jack's passion throughout the rest of his life. His meticulous eye for details helped to make world events at Westminster, such as the visits of Reagan and Gorbachev, appear seamless. And as we've seen today, his meticulous eye for detail helped to make this service appear seamless as well, for Jack gave us instructions for how to celebrate his life. Jack's life of service to the college has been recognized by many special awards, including an honorary doctorate, the Alumni Achievement Award, and the Alumni Award of Merit. His fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, so well represented here today, also honored Jack with the Merit Key and the Order of the Phoenix Award. Jack lived the Westminster College mission in his life of service to the Fulton community as well. He served on the Board of Associates of the Fulton Colleges Fund, the Kingdom of Callaway Historical Society, the Friends of the Library, the Kiwanis Club, the Chamber of Commerce Ambassadors, the State Hospital Board, and the Humane Society Board, and the Friends of the Churchill Memorial. His civic contributions earned him such honors as the Kingdom of Callaway Chamber of Commerce Loyal Subject Award and a resolution of appreciation from the city of Fulton. Most importantly, however, Jack will be remembered for his personal touch in the lives of Westminster students, parents, faculty, staff, alumni, and friends. Jack's memory for names is legendary. He knew the names of everyone who attended Westminster or worked at the college during his tenure. He always had a warm smile and a cheerful greeting for each and every person. Dr. Stephen Yeager, class of 1980, writes on our memorial tribute website, Jack Marshall never was anything but the most pleasant, cheerful, thoughtful, and respectable character, and seemed to be the embodiment of the Westminster ideal. Now, Westminster has always taken great pride in being a close, caring community, and in that regard, Jack Marshall set the standards for all of us to emulate. Jack was also a man of enormous integrity, civil and modest in his dealings with others. Jack nevertheless stood on principle. He had the courage of his convictions and was not afraid to speak the truth to the president of the college, an important donor, a concerned parent, or a student who was learning by doing. I'm so thankful we all had the opportunity to recognize Jack at the President's Dinner in October. It was one of his last public appearances on campus. And the Jack Marshall Endowed Scholarship, made possible by Frank Absher and many other generous donors, many of whom are in this room, will allow future students to benefit from the same personal touch that Jack had for so many of us who loved him. On a personal note, my last visit with Jack came shortly before his death. I sat and listened to his many stories about the college. You couldn't get enough of the stories about Westminster College from Jack. And I brought him up to date on campus activities. It was during our conversation that we happen to talk about a tough decision I recently made. And with that twinkle in his eye that only Jack Marshall could muster, Jack affirmed my decision, and he encouraged me to always stick to principles and follow my sense of what was right for the college. That was Jack, wise counselor and teacher to the very end, and I'll never, ever forget that. You know, on rare occasions in life, we're blessed to cross paths with a person of extraordinary energy and passion. Someone who transforms our life because of his singleness of purpose, his breadth of insight, and genuine goodwill. For many of us, Jack Marshall was just such a person. He lived his life for the people who are Westminster College and his community of Fulton. His dedication to others' well-being had a profound impact on all of us gathered here today. We are better people thanks to his personal encouragement. I would submit we're happier people for having heard his infectious laughter and shared his love of life. We're more compassionate because of his self-effacing humility. And we are more hopeful people because of his courage and his perseverance. And Westminster is a better college because of Jack Marshall's loving stewardship. I think General Larry Kay, Westminster class of '83, may have said it best in his memorial tribute to Jack when he wrote, and I quote, "When we look at the building that is Westminster, Jack Marshall is the cornerstone," unquote. Jack Marshall, Mr. Westminster, well done, good and faithful servant. Be thou at peace. On, Westminster, on.
On behalf of the entire Marshall family, I would like to personally thank you all for being here to help us celebrate Jack's wonderful life. I know many of you traveled a long distance, and let me tell you how much we appreciate that, and Jack would be so pleased as well. Barney, thank you so much for so eloquently describing Jack's dedication and devotion to Westminster. He truly loved this college, loved every staff member, every faculty member, and every student. In fact, he considered everyone at Westminster a part of his extended family. He spent so many years in Fulton, associated with Westminster and with the community. It was such an integral part of his life and a very important part of his life. I'd like to take a few minutes to just talk with you about Jack the man and the older brother to David and me. We absolutely could not have asked for a better brother. I'm sure it was a bit of shock to Jack when, after having 8 years as an only child, I appeared on the scene, and then shortly 2 years later, David arrived. But he was nothing but gracious, supportive, loving, and caring from us from the outset. As you can imagine, when we were younger, we were not as close as we could have been due to the dramatic age difference. 8 years is quite a lot when you're a young child. But we became much closer as we grew, and particularly after we attended Westminster. That was a wonderful bonding and sharing experience for us. You know, it used to kind of drive me crazy, however, when someone would approach me at some event and say to me, "Now, how much older than Jack are you?" I explained to them that Jack had never had the stress of being married and having children. So thus, he was able to maintain his youthful look. But you know, when thinking about it, he really had all the students of Westminster as his children, which of course was not stressful at all. As Barney mentioned, Jack had the knack for remembering everyone who had ever attended this college. You know, he would say to me, "Dick, do you remember so-and-so?" And I'd go, vaguely. And he'd say, "Well, you know, he was in your class, he was a Phi Delt, he's now a banker in Jeff City, and he has 3 children, and blah, blah, blah." I mean, I thought, what a remarkable ability that is. And I think that truly indicated that everyone associated with this college was an extended part of his family, that he could remember all of those details. What words would I use to describe Jack Marshall? Kind, caring, gracious, dedicated, devoted, down to earth, sincere, sense of humor, attention to detail, love for people, a positive influence, humble, modest, inquisitive, a world traveler, and a true gentleman. I'm sure that each of these words brings to mind a distinct and vivid memory of Jack for each of you, as it does for me. And I'd like to focus on a few of these words with some examples that are particularly meaningful to me and David. Humble and modest. Whenever Jack received an award, of which there were many, or some other form of recognition, I just remember him glancing downward and appearing a bit uncomfortable. His humbleness was certainly demonstrated one year at Christmas when I got a tape recorder and thought what fun it would be to stick it under a chair while we were sitting around at my parents' house one Christmas just sort of chatting. So the tape recorder was playing the whole time that we were visiting and carrying on, and so after a while I turned the tape recorder off and played it back. Well, of course you can hear David and me vying for center stage, trying to tell the funniest story, the most interesting facts. Jack, you hear in the background, carrying on a side conversation, one-on-one with one individual. And I think that was one of the things that made him such a fabulous friend to so many people. He was genuinely concerned with everyone and took the time to listen and listen intently. He was probably a much better listener than a speaker. Sense of humor and smiling. Several months ago, when Jack was undergoing radiation treatment, David and I came to Fulton to give him a hand and to take him over to his treatment. We had a particularly difficult day, having been in 3 different hospitals and ending up at University Hospital in Columbia. The doctors were trying to decide whether to remove some fluid from his lung, and after some great discussion, it was decided that probably wasn't really necessary and it could be kind of a risky proposition. So we were getting ready to get out of there, and we were certainly ready to go back to Fulton. The doctor turned to me and he said, "You know, I am a little concerned about the fact that Jack has passed out," because he passed out the night before. And he said, "Has that ever happened before?" And I said, "Well, yes, as a matter of fact, he passed out at the college." Well, the doctor just looked at me and he went, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, that was so many years ago and it's probably from over drinking." I said, "No, doctor, at the college, not when he was in college." Well, of course, Jack, David, and I turned into the Three Stooges. We disintegrated into uncontrollable laughter. And so then the doctor, after we all got ourselves sort of under control, the doctor turned to him and he said, well, Jack, now I wonder, do you remember what doctor it was who performed that procedure on you before when they removed the fluid? And Jack said, oh, yes, I certainly do remember. It was you. So with that, we turned into Curly, Moe, and Larry. One more time, the doctor decided it was way time to dismiss us all from the hospital. We left, and on the way back to Fulton, we laughed and giggled and told funny family stories all the way back. It was such a magical evening. World traveler and inquisitive, Jack loved to travel. Even after he was diagnosed with cancer, he had the opportunity to take some really fabulous trips to Russia, China, Egypt, cruising the Danube, from Budapest to Prague, and innumerable trips to his beloved England. Patty and I had the pleasure of traveling with Jack on the trip to China and also the cruise down the Danube River. And actually, Karen and Earl Ingram, two of our good friends, were with us on that cruise as well. He was always the one who had done all of the research. He knew exactly what we were looking at, the history behind it, every single bit of detail. I mean, he was a fabulous tour guide. You know, and subsequent to that, Karen and Earl and Patty and I took a cruise down the Rhine River, and I can't tell you how many times we went, where is Jack when we need him? What are we looking at? What castle is that? Where are we? So that was very, very special times for us. You know, due to the traveling nature of most of Jack's jobs, he really never had a family pet until he was 71 years old. And at that point, a stray calico cat adopted him. She actually arrived with several additional gifts for him since she was pregnant and shortly delivered 5 kittens. Well, Jack was not particularly tuned in on how to care for cats, and I think it just about sent Patty to the moon. She just kept saying, I'm just going to have to get on a plane and fly out there and tell him what he has to do. Because she delivered these cats in a metal trash can where he kept all of the twigs he picked up out of his yard. Patty said, Jack, you know, you really need to make a nice bed for them somewhere. Jack said, oh no, that's where she wants the babies. That's where she had them. So he kept them in the trash can. Until one night it poured down rain, but Jack, ever resourceful as always, got up in the middle of the night and with his golf umbrella covered up the trash can. Did he move the cats at that point? No. But he did subsequently make a nice little bed for them in his garage. And he ended up keeping one of the kittens. He named the cat Gracie after my mother, and the kitten Gertie after my aunt. And that's probably one of the best parts of our inheritance. Patty and I have inherited 2 cats, Gracie and Gertie. Now, they're not sure how they're going to adapt to our 15-year-old Belle, but fortunately, Belle is about half blind and hard of hearing, so she's got her bluff in on him anyway, but it'll work out fine, and it'll be a fabulous reminder, daily reminder of Jack in our lives. Cancer is really a hideous, hideous disease, but it does give you time to spend with your loved one and the opportunity to tell them how you feel about them, how much they have meant to you in your life. I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with Jack in the last several months. It was a very special time. My son Adam had the opportunity to spend a week with him, and it was wonderful for both of them. Then my 2 nieces, Betsy and Katie, were with him the day that he passed away. What more can you ask for? Dying is not good, but what a good way to die. He was truly loved by his entire family. I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank all of Jack's friends who helped him so very much with his care towards the end of his life. He was so grateful and appreciative of everyone's efforts to make things easier for him. 3 people deserve very special recognition: my cousin Patty Katie and her husband Ned. I cannot tell you how many trips they made from Lawrence, Kansas to Fulton to spend time with Jack, and he loved every second of it, and they did too. Martha Sloss, who devotedly drove him to his treatments in Columbia and checked on him regularly to make sure he was doing well. We cannot thank her enough for the attention that she showed to him, and it is truly appreciated. We thank these 3 people especially, and everyone else who called, who came by to check on him, who brought him food. It was absolutely amazing, and we'll be eternally grateful to each and every one of you. I would like to end by reading the creed of Sigma Alpha Epsilon, fraternity of which Jack was a loyal member, as was just about everyone in our family, starting with my grandfather, who founded the SAE chapter at the University of Missouri. My dad was a member at MU, David, Jack, and I at Westminster, and my son Adam at the University of Arizona. 4 generations of SAEs, plus many other family members. My cousin's son, Ralph, was an SAE at Westminster as well. The creed of SAE is the true gentleman, and I think it describes Jack perfectly. The true gentleman. The true gentleman is the man whose conduct proceeds from goodwill and an acute sense of propriety, and whose self-control is equal to all emergencies, who does not make the poor man conscious of his poverty, the obscure man of his obscurity, or any man of his inferiority or deformity, who is himself humbled if necessity compels him to humble another, who does not flatter wealth, cringe before power, or boast of his own possessions or achievements, who speaks with frankness, but always with sincerity and sympathy, whose deed follows his word, who thinks of the rights and feelings of others rather than his own, and who appears well in any company, a man with whom honor is sacred and virtue safe. Jack was my confidant, he was my counselor, he was my advisor and my friend. I will miss him enormously, as I know everyone in this room will, but I can't help believe that we are all better people for having known Jack.
Following Barney and Jack is not an easy task. They have certainly said a lot of wonderful things about Jack, and it's hard to think of many other things that could be said about him. But I'm third in our family, and I'm used to being last, and so I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that I'd like to share with you. To eulogize a lifelong bachelor who never had children as a family man is probably an unusual way to characterize Jack Marshall, but I can't imagine a better way to describe Jack. Jack was born into a large and loving family in Kansas City, Missouri. Picture 4 grandparents, 12 aunts and uncles, and 14 first cousins. That's the organization that Jack was born into, and that's what he grew up until he went away to Westminster College in. We lived at that time in Kansas City, and our relatives, many of whom lived within walking distance of our house, were not only our family but our best friends, and we spent almost every weekend together. We shared babysitters with our cousins. Our mothers were sisters. Our fathers were best friends, and that was the example that Jack knew as a small child. And Dick mentioned the rude awakening poor Jack had at age 8 when Mother decided to have two younger brothers within an 18-month period. And we were known for years as Jack and the Little Boys. And when we were in high school, we did ask our mother if she might give us a little bit different name than the Little Boys, since we were towering over both her and Jack, and she did. But Dick mentioned what a wonderful brother Jack was, and the fact that he had these two tag-alongs didn't seem to bother him the least bit. When Diane and I were cleaning out some things at Jack's house a week ago, she came in and she said, "Would you like to look at this photo album?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, there's so many at Jack's house, one over the other. You kind of get waylaid looking at them." But I picked it up, and it was a photo album Jack had as a child. And it started with pictures of him and his little cousins, but then it went to Dick's second birthday, David's first birthday, all of the trips we took together and all the things we did together, including the circus we had in our backyard, which Jack orchestrated for Dick and I and the neighbor kids to put on. So we kind of fell into the family mode and loved Jack, and Jack loved us, as was very unusual for an older brother with little toddlers falling behind him. When I was in first grade and went to Border Star Elementary School, we got out at 11:30 for lunch, and in those days you walked home for lunch. Jack went to Southwest High School, and there was an intersection at Meyer Boulevard in Pennsylvania where my walk and his crossed. Well, we had the same lunch hour, and I used to run from first grade to catch up with Jack and all of his friends who were seniors in high school, assuming that he was as thrilled to see me as I was to see him. Luckily, he never acted like that was anything other than a pleasure for him, because that's just the way Jack was, and that's just the way Jack treated us. When Jack went away to college, Dick and I did ultimately outgrow being the Little Boys and ultimately followed Jack to college and became students at Westminster after he had gone to the Army and returned back to work for Westminster. And first year was a wonderful experience for us because we were all in Fulton together and we were having a great time together. We were all SAEs. Dick was in the house, I was a pledge, and Jack was working for the college. And one day in the spring, Jack called me into his office and said, "I wanted to share something with you that's going on and just make sure it's all right with you." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's fine. What could that be?" He said, "Well, they've asked me to be the Dean of Men at Westminster. And I just wanted to make sure that was okay with you, and I'm going to have the same conversation with Dick." And so I thought about it for a little while, and I finally said, "Well, if that's what you want to do, that's fine with me." And Jack said, "Well, we'll make a deal on that. I promise that I will never embarrass you if you promise you will never embarrass me." You know, Jack kept his end of that bargain. When Dick and I graduated from Westminster College, it was probably a very proud moment for Jack and a very happy moment for us. As we walked across the stage to receive our diplomas, Dr. Davidson asked Jack to step forward and present our diplomas to us. And ultimately, the three Marshall boys all became Westminster graduates, which made all of us very proud, and I think made Jack particularly proud, as well as our parents. As we grew up, Dick mentioned the friendship that was built between the three of us. It really was like the Three Musketeers. We enjoyed being together so much. Family holidays were always a pleasure at our house. We were very close, and we just had a lot in common and really enjoyed doing things together. As the time came for Dick and myself to marry, it became a set of new sisters for Jack, and Jack loved those sisters as much as they loved him, and he became a part of the families that Dick and I brought into the Marshall Group. And as our children were born, the first flowers on the table in the hospital room were always a bouquet, "Love, Uncle Jack." And those children meant so much to Jack, and Jack meant so much to them. He came to every possible family event. He went to all of the kids' sports activities, to all of their school activities, to all their graduations. He joined us for every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. Every Christmas we would always laugh because the box of gifts from Jack would come, and it would be about this big, and within it would be about 25 or 30 treasures from Jack's travels throughout the world, and each one carefully selected for the receiver with all sorts of thought and all sorts of caring behind it. When our parents died in 1998, it was obviously difficult for the three of us, and Jack, as he always did, sort of stepped up and assumed the patriarchal role in our family. Our parents used to call us at 5 o'clock every Sunday evening, and they rotated, and they must have kept a calendar because you never knew if you're going to be first, second, or third, but if you were third, it was good because you kind of caught up on what everybody was doing. Well, Jack picked that up as soon as our parents passed away, and it used to be every Sunday at 5 o'clock the phone would ring, and we would say, well, there's Jack on the phone. And so one time I thought, well, I won't answer it. I'll see what happens. And so the answering machine went beep, 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 and then it was, well, it's me. Call me back. Jack loved our family, but only as much as our family loved him. He was such a treasure. Our children have learned so many things from Jack in the years that they were growing up, and with both Dick and I having 3 children and busy lives, a lot of things go on with children that you're not able to either be a part of or really sit down and talk with them about. And what I used to always think about when Jack would come to our house, here he would be, I'd see the back of his head on the couch in the back of one of our 3 kids' heads sitting next to him, and they would just be communicating and dialoguing, and he was sharing with them his wisdom and his knowledge and his interest and his encouragement and the things that he wanted to make sure he passed on to them. The one thing that he always passed on to our daughter Katie was, here's a check for Christmas, but don't spend it on Starbucks. When Jack passed away, it was a very difficult time for our family, but we did what we always do. We came together as a family, and we were at our house, Betsy, Katie, Jed, Eric, my son-in-law, and we were kind of sharing our grief together and thinking about what a wonderful time we had always had with Jack being a part of our family and how much he would be missed. And we were kind of telling stories, and a story that my son-in-law, Eric Rodman, said that I'd never really thought about. But Eric said, did you ever notice when we all got together and we'd have a family toast and somebody would toast something, we'd all raise our glasses and have a little drink of wine or whatever, Jack would always close the toast by saying, and here's to you. And I'd like to close today by saying, here's to you, Jack Marshall. You were the finest brother in the world and the finest man I ever knew. God bless you.
Please stand and join in the singing of Westminster's alma mater.
Thank you, Dr. Forsythe. Thank you, David and Dick. I think all who knew Jack Marshall well will agree that he lived his life in response to what the prophet Micah says God requires of each of us during our days on this earth. For he did justice, he loved kindness, and he walked humbly with his God. Because that is the way Jack Marshall chose to live. Goodness and mercy followed him and overflowed into the lives of others. And as the psalmist says of those who place their trust in the Lord, Jack will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we begin to draw this celebration of Jack's life and legacy to a close, words associated with the two leaders honored in this historic place come to mind. Sir Winston Churchill is reputed to have said, "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give." So it was with Jack, a true servant leader who gave freely of himself for others. Or we could sum up Jack Marshall's legacy by citing the epitaph of Sir Christopher Wren, the architect of this church, inscribed in the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral. If you seek his memorial, look around you. If you seek Jack Marshall's memorial, look around you. At this college, at this memorial, at this community, and at this family. Now let us sing the last of the hymns Jack selected for this service. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Please remain standing for the benediction and also for the recessional. And after Jack's family has been escorted from the sanctuary, please join them for refreshments, fellowship. See the proclamation from the city and a wonderful slideshow on Jack's life prepared by the family. That's downstairs in the Undercroft. Let us pray. Receive, O Lord, into your loving and eternal care your good and faithful servant, our brother, uncle, mentor, and friend, Jack Marshall. May we each be inspired by his life of selfless service, his graciousness, his kindness, his humility, his love of family and friends, and his devotion to the ideals of Westminster College. And now may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of God's Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. And the blessing of God Almighty, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Sustainer, be with you this day and remain with you always. Amen.